What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Highway with Kyle Shutt. I am so stoned. This week, we have a damn treat for y'all. We're talking with somebody you may never heard of, but somebody you need to know. His name's Mr. Tim Sweetwood. I met him as the talent buyer at a club in Atlanta called the Masquerade. This episode's just going to be dedicated to Atlanta. Can we all agree that the world would not be the same if it wasn't for that wonderful city? Shout out to everyone at the Masquerade, Tim's old crew and everybody, Renee, Mallory, they always took such good care of us. I love that venue, love that city. And I love all of our patrons that signed up at patreon.com/thehighway to help us keep this show going. Big shout outs to Rocky Moon, Mr. Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. I bet you get that all the time. Sorry, bud. And Mr. Adam Johnson, they signed up for the Patreon at least the $2 level to get yourself a shout out on the show. At $5, you can get early access to next week's episodes. You can also get a postcard in the mail from me just to thank you for hopping on board, or even help me put a six-pack in the fridge, because you know how I likes my beer. We also got to give a big old hug to Heil Sound, our sponsors. If you like the way I sound, it's because there's a Heil in front of me. Now, I could give shout-outs and love all day long, but I'd rather talk to Tim about all the crazy festivals that he promotes and all the just insane, ridiculous adventures that we got into over the years. And so let's go ahead and hop into it. My way.
The Highway.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
How are you, sir?
Tim Sweetwood, everybody, from Shaky Knees, Shaky Beats, See Here Now, Innings, massive festival promoter and organizer. Thank you so much for coming on the program today. I really appreciate you, bud.
Yeah, definitely. Always good to talk to you, and thanks for the shout out, and let's dig into some fun stuff, huh?
Yeah, I know it's mostly musicians that I bring on this program, but I also love bringing in record producers, music company owners, and just all kinds of people from all different aspects of the music industry to sort of, shine a little light on what goes into these things. And in your case, massive festivals and stuff like that. But before we jump into that, I kind of wanted to get into our history and how I met you, which was when you were a talent buyer at the Masquerade in Atlanta. And yeah, I always thought you were the talent buyer that bought our shows, but you weren't. You were just a fan, and you were the nicest fucking dude, and you always just made sure we had plenty of beer backstage and just like took care of us from day one. I knew you were going places, and so I wanted to know like how you got into promoting shows and what sparked that passion in your life.
Sure, no problem. I mean, so the front side's a little boring, so we'll try to fast forward through some of that. But, I came out of college, worked for a corporation and just a general business thing. And just after being at that for a couple of years, it was just really weighing on me and didn't drive me personally. So, and I should have figured it out earlier in life that I should have just been in the music world, because that's what drove me. And whether it was a friend asking where the hell should I go or what new band did I listen to. So I started out at the bottom, like most of us, and was literally throwing parties and booking local bands and stuff. And then I found an opportunity to book local bands at the Masquerade. And so when I got in with the Masquerade, which is a venue in Atlanta that's been around forever, quickly I was able to, fill different holes they had, whether it was, bringing in more national acts that were outside of the genres they traditionally did, or, even working on sponsorships or helping, hire employees, you name it. So as I eased more into that, business, I was able to take on even more of the talent buyer role, if you will, and again, curating bigger pieces. So that's kind of like the real quick and dirty of the background of where it came to be. And then, you asked about us. I mean, that's just kind of my style, I would say. I mean, it's probably countless with the number of bands that have slept on my couch over the years, or, all that kind of stuff, where what I laugh at is, you're doing the right thing when the band comes through town and they ask how your dog's doing, because it means maybe a couple of years ago they slept on the couch with your dog as well, so it's that, I think that's for me, like, not getting too sappy. It's like, it's just kind of what I enjoy and what I drive, and how much more fun is it to say, like, okay, not only a band that you like respect their music and you're playing it on your iPods coming to town, but that's also my friend, right? So, totally. And I think a lot of those friendships came too was, granted, like back in the day when, just like any other entrepreneurial world, which I really think the music world is entrepreneurial at the end of the day, that's where I was spending my time, man. There were many years where I was at the venue 6 or 7 days out of the week. So if I'm there and I'm working, it's like, when you came through 2 or 3 times a year, it's like I'm seeing you more than I did college buddies at that point. Right. So it makes it's that connection or friendship, like you said. And then, most of these musicians have some, like, they're like-minded people, right? Like, they're playing music because they're into music. They're not playing music because it's like they were forced into it, or their parents were like, hey, I want you to major in musical studies in college. I really think that's where you succeed. It's like they're into it because they want to be,
That's a really good point. And wouldn't that be a world where you're expected to become a musician?
Right. Or like, hey, man, I got an idea for you, Tim. Like, my dad's going to come to me and he's like, so for 5 or 6 years, you're going to eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches only, and you're really going to struggle. But, God, it'll be great in the long run. You know what I mean?
Right,
so.
Yeah, I know. Well, the venue, the Masquerade, the original one, which was that in Little Five Points, or it was kind of around there?
No, it's technically like Midtown, Ponce, Highlands. Like, Little Five Points is where, like, Variety Playhouse was, and the Old Point and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but you could walk there. I just remember like taking a walk down there from time to time. But it was you
remembered taking walks to the Claremont Lounge. Let's be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're gonna get into that later. but the venue itself, it had a little stage, a medium sized stage, a big outdoor lawn, and then also had like the machine shop in the back of it, because it wasn't like an old mill or something like that.
So the shop behind it, actually, majority of the years was actually a factory for mellow mushrooms. So it made dough. It was like their pizza dough factory for all the mellow mushrooms in Atlanta. Yeah, and then once they moved out, the Masquerade just kind of turned it into different things, and I was going to
say, because you always walked us through the haunted house.
That's right.
And that was the most brutal haunted house I've ever been to in my life. Holy shit, man! Like, oh my God, it was
not
so
for the faint of heart.
No, not at all. Almost as scary as the Claremont Lounge.
Almost, you couldn't consume a beer in the haunted house, but you could consume a beer at the Claremont Lounge. So,
oh man, for those that don't know, the Claremont Lounge is what was known as the stripper's graveyard. I guess that was maybe not the politest term for it, but there wasn't any dancer in there that was under 55.
That's pretty darn accurate. That's pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, back in the day anyway. I don't know if it's been kind of yuppified since then or anything, but it was just a place to party after the shows where it was anything went, and I had way too many nights there.
Way too many nights. But I'll tell you what, like, it was definitely one of those watering holes where it's, the majority of the time you knew 90% of the people in there or whatever it was. And, for being as dive bar as it gets, it really is a pretty cool, friendly place of memories for sure. So.
Hopefully I can put a whole chapter in the book dedicated to it.
There.
I knew it was for real.
Just leave the pictures out of that chapter, all right? No pictures in that chapter.
I knew it was a legit place, a legit dive whenever Anthony Bourdain wrote about it.
That's right.
In a book he wrote called The Nasty Bits. I was like, hey, I've been there.
That's right.
But yeah, that was funny. But then eventually... you outgrew the Masquerade, or I don't know if I'm sure you still have ties there or something, but you started to do festivals.
Yeah, there's a lot of ties there. I mean, outgrew is a I don't know if that's the best summary, but it's not way off. So like, Shaky Knees, which was the first festival I ever like produced and owned, was still during my time at the Masquerade. And, you know, that came along when they actually they took away the parking lot that went with the Masquerade and some old dilapidated buildings, and there was a park that went in there. So for me, being a festival junkie, it made a lot of sense to do a festival, and that's where it kind of came along. So that it became, I was producing the festival, and then I was just doing a lot more shows outside of the Masquerade than I was producing inside. So that was that natural post. So I guess you could say I outgrew it for sure. I mean, it went as far as I was, you know, producing Outcast shows, right, and downtown in the park. So definitely can't hold those in a venue the size of the Masquerade.
No bad blood though, right?
No. My, I have partner, the principal owner there and stuff like that is still a partner of mine, and we do some business together. So zero bad blood. You know, I think they were very appreciative for the Masquerade has had some tremendously great years, but then they've also had downswings, and I was there. I came in one of those downswings and brought a certain, you know, cred back to it for certain genres, and I think they're very happy with that. So
it was the cool club in town. I can tell you that much. Anytime I saw it on a tour routing, I knew I was going to have a fantastic time, and I knew that we were going to party, and it was always a great time. And whenever you made the jump from booking our shows there to having us on at your festivals, you really did take that mentality of how you treated bands, and you applied that to your festival. I've played a lot of festivals and got treated like shit at a lot of them, not gonna lie, but you always made sure every band had everything they needed, had really nice backstage kind of patio areas to hang out at. You really have attention to detail, and watching you go through all that was really inspiring, because I remember when you moved Shaky Knees from the park to was it the Olympic Park?
Yeah, it was the Olympic Park, and then, like, you know, shutting down streets around the arena downtown.
It was that whenever the police told you that you couldn't hold a festival at this park because you couldn't have that much street traffic going over. I remember you thinking like, well, can I just build a fucking bridge over the road?
That's it, man.
And you did.
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah. That story's fun. There's a lot of stories about that bridge, but that was basically it. There was a new police chief in town, and he's like, you know what? There's enough traffic there that I don't really want to shut down that street. And I was like, you know what? Fair enough. I'm going to build a bridge that goes over it. And then at that point, there was no reason they couldn't say no to that. So it's like, hey, whatever works, and I'll go. But, you know, you pointed out that thing is like, again, not only do I enjoy taking care of bands, there's also another reason for it. Funny enough, is like you could probably say it as a musician, is like, you don't put on the same show every night, right? And one of the reasons you put on better shows or worse shows is probably how you're feeling in a certain day, or the vibe around there. It's less of like, you know, did your guitar tech put the string on, you know, exactly how you like it? I think it's more just like that ethereal vibe. So it's like, if you go into a festival and you're like, okay, we're going to play at Sweetwood's, this is going to feel good, and he's going to take care of us. And when normally I'm at a festival and they're saying no to my bottle of tequila, but I say yes to it because it's just like, you know, it makes you feel at home, and I think it creates a better performance. And so that's the other alternate reason. It's like there's a method behind that madness for sure. It's like, I want you to feel good because then you're going to play a raging set, you know?
But you're being so modest, dude, because like, just from this is anecdotal maybe, but from our experience when you had us play the Shaky Knees once it had moved to the Olympic Park, you also had the Shaky Nights where you would have, you know, a band play a big, you know, daytime festival show, and then you would also bring them into one of the clubs later that night. And you had booked Huey Lewis and the News playing Sports in its entirety, and you knew like what huge fans we were. And when you reached out to book us for that festival, we were like, can we please play the same day as Huey Lewis? And you were like, guys, I love you, but Huey's on the day after you. There's nothing I can do about it. But what I can do is I'll make your Shaky Nights the day of the Huey show, and I'll make sure that it's till way after, you know, that he's done after, you know, you guys need to go on at your club show. And you went above and beyond. You had us, I think it was just me and Brian that were able to make it, but yeah, you had us on the side of the stage watching Huey Lewis and the News with a pig roast barbecue to celebrate afterwards, and then shoved us in an Uber and sent us over to Center Stage to play our night show. I mean, like, no, there's not a festival promoter in the world that will listen to a band and accommodate them the way that you accommodated us, and I will never forget you for it.
Well,
So
I agree.
I'll quit kissing your ass now, but
No,
I just wanted to say thank you so much.
I greatly
man.
appreciate it, and it's like let's be honest. Anybody out there that doesn't like Huey Lewis in the News too really kind of has to check themselves, at least from like our age demographic, right? So it's like at least if you were born in the 70s, 80s, maybe even the tail end of the 60s, you know, I could get it if you're younger and you don't get it, but it's like if you don't like Huey Lewis in the News, are we honestly friends? Like
It was the original band too. It was the News.
Oh yeah,
the whole thing. Yeah,
you know that the funny story about that, which is one of my favorite stories, was I always try to book a few throwbacks on the festival because I think Shaky Knees in particular, it's like it's a bit of a tastemaker to it. So a lot of the modern day bands that are playing it, I like to go grab a couple of those bands that were influenced by, you know, hence this Huey Lewis in the News, which you were just as excited to see, just as excited you were to play your set there. But I actually got a personal call from him before the confirmation of the festival because him and his manager were worried that like if he played this quote unquote contemporary rock festival that like no one would be at his set. So I got cold called by Huey, you know, from a San Francisco number, and thank God I answered it. And he just wanted me to justify, there'll be people there. And I took it as far as to say, not only do I think there'll be people there may be more people there for your set than the headliner, but you know, let's not go all the way there. But it's pretty cool.
That
man.
Field was full.
Yeah, that field was full. And there's one of the things that, you know, gets me off at the end of the day. To book a childhood influence and do it at the end of the day is pretty awesome. And by the way, he's cool as shit in person and totally chill and hung around for the whole day at the festival too.
I didn't get to meet him, but whenever I stand on the side of the stage to watch a band, I try to be as respectful as possible. I know what that feels like, you know, when it's their space for that time, you know, and I don't want to. You know, me personally, when I'm playing a show, I like the more the merrier. I like when a ton of people crowd around, but not every band is like that. And so I try to be very respectful and stuff. And so I always try to pick the side of the stage that I think that the artist isn't going to enter on. Because I don't want to be a hanger-on and just try to like get a photo op or anything like that. But I usually end up picking wrong, and I accidentally picked the side of the stage that Huey came up on, and he walked right by me, and I was like, shit, man, I don't want to, you know, because I've been kicked off the stage before, like when Slash is playing or something like that.
Sure.
Somebody asked you to leave, and hey, fine, whatever, you know, it's not a big deal, I get it. But Huey kind of like stopped and looked around, and like he turned and looked me dead in my eyes. And then kind of kept looking around at other people and then kept walking to the stage. And I was like, he thinks I'm cool. All right, this is great. He thinks I'm supposed to be here.
I was going to say, do you think he was thinking you were some long-haired blonde hippie? Or did he think you were a musician? Like, what do you think he thought there, you know?
I don't know.
I
don't care. I'm just glad I didn't get kicked off.
My man, I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Also, instead of a golf cart, which is how most people get around festivals, you actually have a miniature gravedigger monster truck that you use to get around. Is it the gravedigger? Right?
Yeah, it's currently out of commission, but yeah, and unfortunately, it only holds one. So we need to get that fired back up. That's something I need to do.
It only needs one. Let's be honest.
That's right, and it's like the best part about it is with as tall as I am, you know, I think it's meant for a kid to sit in there, but I think my chest is sticking out of the top. So. You know, again, the many perks of producing and putting on your own festival, right?
Right. Well, and let's talk about that, man. So, I mean, your average festival goer in the before times, in the long ago, you know, they don't really know what goes into that. They just see, you know, all of a sudden this insane lineup. And then, you know, these, you know, relatively expensive tickets, but for what you get to see, it's really not all that much. And sure, you got to pay for parking or maybe even camping or this or that. And it is, you know, somewhat of a hassle to get in and out of a giant festival, but it is an enormous load of work planning an event like that. What kind of insight do you have to your average concert goer that would just think that you just call a bunch of bands and book a festival and sell tickets and that's it?
Yeah, I think that, you know, it's... First of all, I think it compares to like most people's jobs, right? So I don't want to downplay it because it is a ton and a shitload of work, and you know it generally like you know, especially when I start one from scratch. I mean, it's pretty much about a 2.5 year venture to start, like, and we can get into some of that Exit 111 talk, but it's like, you know, when you start it from concept to fruition, it's, you know, 2 years to get those things going. But just like most people's jobs, yeah, there is a lot more that goes into it. There's day to day, there's, legality, all that kind of stuff. And I think one of the hardest parts that people don't realize half the time is, you get it all over social media these days is, man, why haven't you had Radiohead on Shaky Knees and all that kind of stuff or whatever it is? And it's like, we could just use that as an example is, sure. Radiohead on Shaky Knees is like, a lot of people don't understand, the bigger a band gets, the more they're working versus non-working. So for people that aren't into the industry, it's like Radiohead is probably a big enough band where it's like, from a touring perspective, they work once every 4 years, right? Or something like that. So it's like, once you get to that level, it's like, okay, I don't even have a shot at booking Radiohead most years as a headliner for the festival. And then the year that I do finally book them is I'm trying to say, okay, Shaky Knees, it's the first weekend of May. Hey guys, are you available any of these 3 particular days on the 1 year that you're working when you're trying to tour around the world? So that percentage is even smaller and smaller. And then you get into the competitive side of like, okay, X festival in California wants them the same weekend. I want them the same weekend. So then you're trying to compete and get to it. So it's like, it really is a long, drawn out process at the end of the day, right? Kind of like you said. So there's so much more that goes into it. Or again, even the percentage to try to actually get the band, let alone do you even have the funds to get the band? I'm sure people can imagine just like inflation, band prices go up, scarcity of those bands go up over time. So it's long and drawn out. And sometimes I don't even have the chance to book who I want,
What's your dream band?
Oof, that's a question that happens a lot. I'd probably, in which may never happen, I'd be pretty close to say like, I feel like personally some I've missed. Okay, I'll go with the one that I missed is Rush. I missed out on that. I missed out on that one. So that would probably be a dream band that I missed. Another dream band that could be attainable. It's just, whether the stars align is like maybe like an REM, or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah. They're pretty close to that dream scenario. And again, now, especially because they're quote,
not too far off.
not working. But hey, I'm in Georgia with that festival, and maybe there's a little hometown love,
Uh-huh.
So
totally.
Yeah. Good question though.
Man. Well, you never know. And I don't want to. This podcast isn't about talking shit or dragging anybody through the mud or anything like that. And you don't have to name names, but what's the horror story? Is there a horror story you wouldn't mind sharing? You can, leave the names out. Unless you really don't care and you want to blast.
No, are you talking about like from a band perspective or just in general with a
band
festival?
That you thought was going to be cool and it turned out to be just total fucking dicks. I don't know if there's any story that you just... you're so nice. Everybody probably really likes you and they're really respectful of you.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I'll tell you one story which is pretty funny, and it's good because it won't run somebody under the bus per se. So I've, for some reason, as much as like I'm a rock guy, that's the way it is at the end of the day. And I respect all genres. I love classical, jazz, and I love old school hip hop and all that, but I'm rock at the end of the day. And I had all that self-discovery as a kid. I didn't have an older brother or sister telling me what to listen to. So for some reason, I fucking hate Green Day, right? Like, I just don't like Green Day. And it's like, I'm like, so like, I've had people like, oh, put Green Day on your festival. And I'm like, cool. Like, I don't know. I'd rather have like a cooking seminar up on there than booking, Green Day. I just don't like Green Day. So, but funny enough, I think it was 2006, was it 16 or 17? 2016, I booked the Replacements, right? And the Replacements were on the festival and they were actually an added band. Well,
one of my favorite bands too.
Yeah,
I fucking love that.
Totally
band so
underrated band, right? Billy Joe Armstrong sitting in. So it's like I get this call where they're like, "Hey, Billy Joe's coming through. He wants some extra guests, whatever." And again, never meeting these guys or whatever. I'm like, "Well, I fucking hate Green Day." Well, you deny his passes. Like, I don't want him at the festival. I don't like Green Day, whatever, right? So
Oh my God.
of course, being like you said, I'm not a dick when it comes down to it like that. So I'm like, yeah, of course he can come, and yes, he should be at the festival. Well, then of course the day they play, unbeknownst to me, and not that anyone told him, they're like, I get a call on the radio, and they're like, hey, the Replacement guys and Billy Joe want to see you, and all this kind of shit. And I go in their dressing room, and Billy Joe couldn't have been a nicer guy. Like, it was one of those things where it was like, he was like, hey man, I just want to thank you for letting us play your festival. It's so cool. We've been well taken care of. We're just going to have a great setup there, all that kind of stuff. Like, are there any particular songs you even want us to put on your set? And like,
Oh my
and it's
God.
like, it makes your stomach kind of sink, because you're like, man, should I tell him that I've never liked his band? I should just be like, should I never liked it? So it's like, it's funny how the world works, where it's just like a band that, and don't get me wrong, I respect them. I've just never been into their music. And so, but here it is, he comes through, and it's like, wouldn't it have gone over better if I didn't like the band and he was also a huge asshole? But he was completely opposite. So he was completely opposite. So
Oh my God.
yeah, the only downplay, and I won't use names, is the only downplay I'll say with bands is sometimes bands can get too big too quick, and that leads to them being kind of more nitpicky and a little more arrogant than they should be. That's the only thing I'll say is, knock on wood, most bands I meet, musicians are very welcoming and they're cool and they work hard and they get it. But a lot of bands that rise to some of that prominence too quickly are like, okay, well now we want this. And it's like, really, dude? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's some of that.
I've seen it happen. Every band has a different experience. So I've seen many sides of it, and the faster they rise, the faster they fall sometimes. But sometimes a band will just get straight to the top and just stay there, and it blows my mind how people can just like this garbage. But
Right.
I don't want to focus on the negative. One thing I wanted to ask you is, Shaky Knees was very successful. I don't know about behind the scenes, but just from an outsider's point of view, a very, very successful festival. And it started branching you out into other festivals. Was that all under your same partnership umbrella, or is that a kind of thing where people see you kind of, cooking and they want to get into some of that action? So, because you started doing See Here Now and Innings and just all kinds of like amazing festivals with just every band or every genre of music just under the sky, pretty much.
Yeah, and I want to continue doing more of that. So there's a lot of stuff I can't reveal, and hopefully, COVID gets out of the way sooner rather than later. But so like a lot of those first couple things of Shaky Boots, Shaky Knees, all that kind of stuff. I had some guys who became my friends and now are my partners and things like that at C3 Presents, and they had bought into my company and actually bought the majority of it. So one of the great things with that was I was able to expand quicker than just doing it myself, because I'm definitely one of those people that like I don't come from money, and I didn't have a big bank or anything to do this, so there was a lot of like risk in the beginning. So that joining them and having them purchase over half my company was a good way for me to expand quicker and do some of these things, and being able to take a little more risk. Because another thing, and you pointed out that people have no idea, is like some festival can seem wildly successful, but it's losing a lot of money behind the scenes. And a lot of these festivals take years. Some you get lucky and by year 2 they're making money. Others can take 5 to 6 years to make money, and some can never make money. So more often than not, when you see a festival go away, it's just because financially it's not doing great. So
it's unfortunate when it happens, but kind of like Exit 111, which we can talk about if you want.
Yeah.
The only thing I had to say about that was whenever the Sword went on its indefinite hiatus, it was really crazy planning, because I had already announced, I had already planned a Doom Side of the Moon tour, which was my Pink Floyd heavy metal cover band laser show experience. And I had also planned.
Which, please don't ever retire that. By the way, that's the best shit ever. And just for those listening, if there's anybody even listening, more than a couple people, it's like we really tried to do a late night Shaky Knees with that, and we should revisit that at some time. That would be cool as shit.
We really should.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. But that, and I had also already planned my solo album Kickstarter. So whenever the Sword announced its hiatus, that really came out of nowhere. But I already had this other stuff planned to announce, and it seemed like a knee-jerk reaction. But really, I had already planned it out, and and stuff. So whenever I did the solo album Kickstarter, it you know, worked out, and I did the album, did the tour, and it just kind of became, you know, very apparent to me that, you know, it was going to be a struggle to get this solo career, you know, on the road and stuff like that, and playing shows might not be the best way to go about it. And I was just going to have to really like start to think about different ways to do it. And I really wanted to get on a festival. That was just one of my big things. Was I was like, you know, if I could just get this band on a festival, it'd be a good look. It doesn't even have to be a great show. Sometimes, you know, you play a festival at noon and you play to like 5 people. You know, but your name's on that poster and it looks crazy. And it's almost like sometimes when you play a festival, it's not about the people at the festival. It's about all the people that aren't there. And it's like it creates this perception of your worth and stuff. And so, you know, I had in my mind, like, I need to get on a festival. It'll be a good look. And I called you up out of nowhere. And I called a few people, a few festival promoters that I know. And none of them returned my call. You... I think within 5 minutes of me asking you if you had anything going on that you think I would be a good fit for, your reply wasn't even a reply. It was a contract to play the Exit 111 festival. That was your reply. And I will never forget your generosity there. You paid me more than fairly. It was a great slot. You had me, you know, I wasn't up against Slayer or anything like that. You know, it was a good time. It was a solid band. We had such a great time playing it. And there was a lot of people there too. I mean, we had a great show. I know that festival went away, and unfortunately, but it's one of those things where it was at the same grounds as Bonnaroo was at, so it was kind of like a heavy metal Bonnaroo in Manchester, Tennessee, with like Guns N' Roses headlining and Anthrax and Slayer's last show ever. So, you know, on paper it looked like a solid sell, but I've definitely seen shows at that main field where like we saw Metallica, you know, play there to 80,000 people, and whenever Guns N' Roses went on that night, I mean, there was a shitload of people there, don't get me wrong, but I could tell that there just wasn't near enough people to justify that kind of festival setup, and that might be one of those, you know, instances where like it looks way better than it is behind the scenes. Is that something you'd want to comment on or anything like that? Like
look,
what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, funny enough, like, well, and A was happy to have you on the festival. It's super cool. And again, that's what you want. You want friends on the festival too, right? Like, I made many new friends, funny enough, that festival too, at those. So hopefully those friendships will continue too. But, you know, a lot of, I was always anxious to do something in that scene because I don't know what the description would be. I wouldn't say like a closet metal fan or something. It's just a genre I love and a genre it's in. But I think some of the times too, I wanted to blend what's there and do obvious things like, you know, that some people would be like, why the hell did you do that? But it works. Like I got a ton of shit when the lineup came out where people are like, wait a minute, so you're putting Leonard Skinner and Slayer on the same stage back to back? And I'm like, yeah, I am. And so a lot of those initial comments were like, that sounds stupid. But then overwhelming the comments were like, man, that is going to be cool. So you're telling me Slayer's going to warm up for Leonard Skinner and it's going to be,
it was fucking cool, man.
And it's going to be their last Tennessee show ever. And it's like, yeah, it is. And it's like, okay, well, I'll be there. You know what I mean? So, you know, so stuff like that is really cool. And funny enough, it's, even though it did not perform financially how it should, it's still easily right now is like one of my favorite festivals I've ever produced. Because I'm very into, like, it's one thing where the music is obvious, but I like all the extra elements that go along with it, right? So, I mean, we had this thing called Paranormal Cirque, which is like a haunted house meets Cirque du Soleil, and we had a cool bike jump, and we started off the days with a car show, and we had, you know, a 300-foot college bar that had all the football games on, and just, you know, all kinds of different cool shit like that going on. And funny enough, it's meant to grow. So, you know, that's, you know, Bonnaroo, you know, because it does those 80,000 people a day, you know, that's what it's built for. And the expectations were not 80,000 people a day. So there was, you know, I won't give you the exact amount, but there was certainly more than 15,000 people there a day, but there wasn't 40,000 people there a day, right? So to your point, those headlining sets are there, and it kind of works that. The good part is what comes with that, though, too, is there is not, and you should check it out if you haven't. There's a massive Exit 111 like fan page on Facebook, and they still post like every day to this day.
Totally, I've seen it.
Yeah, the coolest part of Exit 111 is I don't know that there was a single person that walked away from that festival that didn't have a good time. Right, so
it was an amazing time. Everybody there had a fantastic time.
And it was a super good time considering it was that like weird anomaly where this like cold storm came through, and like, you know, we were watching Def Leppard. There's a video out there that they did that you should go watch too. It's Def Leppard's coldest show to date that they had ever done. They had actually performed live. They were like, their hands were like freezing by the end of it and all this stuff. So again, the cool part is it didn't perform, and that's just the things that happen. And when those happen is like a lot of people are out there saying, you know, oh, I think it'll come back. Oh, it'll never come back. And it's like none of them have a clue. And I actually kind of like that they don't have a clue. That's kind of the mystique. So never say never on that festival and brand. There's definitely a conversation to be had there. But also COVID got in the way of a lot of those conversations to continue as well. So
yeah. So, but you canceled. You can say, oh, yeah, we canceled before COVID. We canceled.
There you go. That's right. That's right. Cool. Yeah, exactly. COVID didn't cancel us. We canceled ourselves, right?
The shittiest thing I could say. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good.
Man, it's so enlightening to hear you talk about these things. Just because it's as an artist, getting to these festivals can be like pretty harrowing. But the in and outs that you had there of just the routings and stuff like that, because you can have a band that's on a tour routing that's supposed to, you know, they played Oklahoma City the night before, and they're supposed to be in San Antonio by 1:00 p.m. for their set. You know what I mean? And so not only do you have to load out after your Oklahoma City show and drive all the 9 hours to San Antonio, when you even get to the festival, you got to wait in 3 hours of traffic to even find your parking space, and like nobody knows where you're supposed to park. Even like the festival promoters, like the parking attendants and stuff, they're like, I don't know. Like there's no communication. It seems like at a lot of festivals, but with Exit 111, it was very cut and dry. And easy to get in and out of. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But one thing that was funny was the artist sort of camping area. We were the only band that showed up early because we had played Little Rock the night before, and we were like, let's just I know how hard it can be to get into these things. Let's just go there the night before. That way we can just wake up and play our whatever 2 p.m. set, and have no stress. So we get there the night before, and like nobody knew who we were, what was going on. It was hilarious, and like I remember people on the radios were squawking back and forth at each other, and the radio conversation that was going on with all the security guards backstage was nuts. Like we pulled up, we asked this lady, it's like, hey, we're the Kyle Shutt band, we're just looking for the artist camping area. It was pitch black out there in the middle of the woods, and then she gets on the radio and she's like, hey, I've got a young man here looking for the artist camping. And then the next thing was like, someone's like, this raccoon is attacking me. Like, that's not a raccoon, that's a skunk. Where's my battery? My radio's dying. And then somebody comes in and they go, the artist camping is on 4th Avenue. And I said, where's 4th Avenue? And she goes, where's 4th Avenue? And the radio goes, it's between 3rd and 5th.
The absolute that personifies the absolute joys of doing a festival in nowhere, Tennessee. I mean,
it was great.
Yeah, it's Manchester, Tennessee is a fun place, but it's technically Exit 111 in the middle of nowhere. So it gets pretty dark and pretty pitch black out there. So I feel you. Hey,
we had fun.
Going back to what you said, which is hilarious, and I again thank you for the logistical compliment. But I saw a meme the other day that was talking about how if the way this vaccine rollout is going is if they really would have just left it to the music industry and some festival promoters, I think everybody in the world would have it by now. And there's some sarcasm there, but there's also not. Like it's funny where it's like leave it to us, and it's just like at the end of the day, if someone's like, "What do you do?" It's like I do logistics. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah. music industry is a crack team of logisticians. Is that a word? I don't know, but the numbers people. Like whenever the election drama was going on, they were like, just let all the out of work merch people count the ballots. We'll have it done by midnight, and we'll be partying at no time. It's true. Like,
that's exactly.
There's so many resources they could have utilized.
I was gonna say run them all through the Bonnaroo site. If we can get 50,000 cars through there in 24 hours, we can certainly do it with vaccines. So
absolutely. What? Sorry, I was going to ask.
No, you're fine.
About trying to plan for camping out at Bonnaroo. Is that added kind of logistical things? Is that much more work, or was it already pretty much set up for you? Because like Shaking Ease and stuff, it's all like city festivals,
yep,
and things like that. But when you add that entire like tent city aspect to it, is that much more work, or was it pretty cut and dry?
Yeah, it's more work, but you're hiring more people, right? So it's, you can't, there's a lot of festivals that I produce and work with where a lot of jobs overlap. And one of those jobs that doesn't overlap is camping. And it's pretty crucial because it really, what it comes down to, and most people do it, is that's when it really says, a lot of people are like, oh, you're really setting up a city. That's what Bonnaroo is. It's setting up a city because when it comes to camping, you're 24/7. To your point, Shaky Knees, whatever other city festival it is, it's like, there's people out there all the time, but you're turning it on at 11 a.m. and you're turning it off at 10 p.m. Whereas like, whether it's Exit 111 Bonnaroo, any camping festival, it's 24/7. So you're really just, you can't, it is more work and it takes a little longer, but you're just hiring more people to handle more areas, and they're that much more sensitive too. They have to be, you got to go over it a few times for sure. You can't just lay out a plan and go. So,
man, I miss festivals.
I know.
They were fun.
I know, right? I mean, I think a lot of people would say they miss Porta Johns these days. I don't know. There's not a person, friend, or acquaintance that I know that wouldn't say, yeah. I'll go to the bathroom in a Porta John. Absolutely, if we get back to a festival right now.
Oh my God, I just I don't know, rock and roll. It was one thing when we were all in our kind of early mid-20s and stuff. Like you just do anything. But the older you get, the more kind of financial responsibilities you get. Once you start maybe having kids or this or that, touring becomes tougher and stuff like that. And especially like just getting the ship off the ground. It seems like it takes a lot more work than it used to. But God, I miss it so much.
I think that relates to what you guys do. There's another misnomer, right? Where it's like people don't know how much goes into a festival. Is people don't know how much goes into a band, right? Like when you're playing a bigger stage and you become a bigger act, there's a reason you have to hire a guitar tech. It's one thing when the Sword's playing the Earl and you do load it in yourself and all that kind of stuff is one. From obvious reasons, you're financially limited and stuff like that. But then the other reason is the stage just isn't that big. So there's like, you can't have these elements. But the bigger it all gets, it's like, the monitor board isn't sitting on the side of the stage. It's actually off the stage and down the way. Or there's a guy that's like, the sound system's so big that you can't just have the house guy mix it. You got to have a guy that comes with you because your sound goes off. So it's like, I try to break down that barrier all the time that people believe. They're like, oh man, the Swords, playing to 1,500 people in Atlanta at the Masquerade, they must be like wealthy dudes. And it's like, actually, they're kind of making almost the same amount of money when they were playing 300 because there's that much more of a team and there's that many more employees on their payroll, right? There's
totally.
No doubt.
I mean, and even then you have to. Every tour you kind of have to like look at the budget and pick and choose what you're going to take and like see how you spend your money. I mean, every band is different, but that's why you see some bands when they are playing a 1,500 seater venue and they pull up in a bus and you're like, well, there's your guarantee right there. I just know for a fact that like you're not bringing in nearly enough people to justify having this bus that even at the minimum will cost you $50,000 a month.
Right.
Right. That's to rent a shitty bus, and stuff like that. So that's why we always chose, as often as we could to hop in a van. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you're doing a cross-Canadian winter tour and driving a van on a highway with 2 inches of ice on it just isn't an option, and you have to just kind of choose your battles there and stuff like that. Is the tour worth it? This and that. There's so much more that goes into booking tours.
Did you find that? Did you find that even harder when you were going to Europe and having success in Europe as the Sword, and where you draw maybe 2 times as many people in some German city as you would in Atlanta, but it's that much harder to get over there, or what?
No, actually, I've talked about this before on the podcast. The Sword didn't really have that kind of European experience. Our shows were good, but I wouldn't say they were better than the U.S. Like we still played, mid-sized clubs and some festivals and stuff, but it's the expense of being over there was so much more, because sometimes you had to have a bus. Like just doing it in a little Sprinter van just wasn't an option because of the weather, or like the time of year, or the kinds of the tour routing that you had,
or you're literally taking a 3-hour drive, but you're going to a different country, right? Where it's like you take a 3-hour drive in the States, and it's like the rules for a band from Tennessee to Georgia really aren't that different, but the rules from Germany to Austria could be completely different on how they do their taxes or what they let in, or all that kind of stuff.
The carnets too on rented gear, because you have to rent all your gear when you're over there, unless you know a band that'll let you borrow some, or you share a bus or a van with a band that they're letting you share their gear, or there's a million different ways to look at it. But these the carnets, the taxes you have to pay to actually bring your gear into another country to make income, and then the tax situation that the promoter has to sign over to like pay your taxes out of their cut. It's absolutely crazy.
I bet.
I can't believe we did it for so long.
Right?
It was a long time. I mean, like we're looking at 15 years since Age of Winters came out in 2 weeks. That's just crazy.
Let's be honest. In every musician or anybody who's ever been in the music industry, there's got to be just a hair of crazy. There's just a little bit of crazy to pull off what you're trying to pull off. So.
A lot of crazy. We're nuts. We're all fucking crazy. But man, Tim, thanks so much for being on the program. I hope. I'm positive everyone's going to get a lot of insight out of this, and I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to just shine a little light on that, because it's something that not a lot of people think about. So just thanks for being you, man.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Rock fucking on, and
Yeah. Like, what else you got cooking? Is there anything you can talk about, or is it all just sort of up in the air right now because of the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's gonna be. We're trying our best as a company and stuff to get off some of these festivals in the fall. I mean, as we sit here, it's mid-January, and it's like we're bullish and hopeful on the fall, but who knows what the summer will hold. But 2022, I plan to put up a couple new festivals and expand a couple of the brands that are out there and stuff like that. So it'll certainly be fun, and it'll certainly be a lot busier than it is now. That's for sure. So
awesome. Well, thanks so much, bud.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Please don't stop. Please don't stop.
And I won't.
Thanks so much for tuning into The Highway this week. A big shout out to Reverend Guitars, Railhammer Pickups, and Earthquaker Devices. If you liked what you heard, you can follow where you can follow, subscribe where you can subscribe, and if you want to go one step further, you can support us on Patreon at The Highway with Kyle Shutt. For a few bucks a month, you can help us keep this party going, get early access to next week's episode, and even get yourself a shout out.